if I'm a producer and I'm making beats, right, and I don't learn the business, I'm supposed to rely on somebody else to handle all of my business. I'm an adult.
Like, if you really want to be a boss, you got to boss up and learn the industry that you say you want a career in.
Peace, what's going down, everyone? It's the Music Entrepreneur Club podcast. This is episode 90. We hit it. 90. I'm at a loss for words. 90 weeks of making money hand over fist with the internet's most popular podcast.
Man, these weeks fly by fast, man. 90 weeks, haven't missed a week. I definitely understand our podcast is not the biggest in the world, but the people that rock with us really rock with us. So I appreciate that. And before we got on air, we were kind of laughing about, how we don't probably do the best marketing and promotion of the podcast, but that'll change. I promise. I'm definitely going to do more on my behalf. So we'll get the word out there, because I think, we're bringing more guests on, and a lot of the things that we talk about, I think, need to be shared more widely. So we'll get better, maybe around our 100th episode, something like that. But
I honestly think the key is just putting KE's face in all the thumbnails for each episode.
I definitely don't want KE to become a thing. Unless he comes on, I'll allow him to come on the podcast. But yeah, anyway. So,
well, law of attraction is just keep putting him in the thumbnail freeze frame with his mouth open, and it'll eventually happen. Music Entrepreneur Podcast hit 90. We're 10 away from 100. We're powered by beatstars. We're live twice a week for our free music business mentorship program, Mondays and Thursdays at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on beatstars.live. Check out musicentrepreneur.com for more details. We do have a special guest today, and before I introduce him, I think Dame has some announcements.
Yeah.
I always talk over, and then it's like a car crash between my show prep and Dame's announcement. So let me just take a step back for once.
And let me change my mic real quick too.
Oh, you were on the shitty mic this whole time.
I was, but I think I'm good now. So apologies. We do have a special guest, and I want to get to that as quick as possible, but just a couple of updates. Number one, we have an MEC Discord channel. I don't know what I'm doing in it just yet, but we're going to get it popping. We got a good amount.
Don't say that.
We got a good amount of members. I don't know if you call them members, but people in our Discord. We're probably a little over 100. If you want to join our Discord, please go to the MEC Instagram page. The link is in the bio. So join us. I'll be figuring it out. A lot of the communication will be in there in regards to some of the other things we do, like our artist management roundtable discussion that we've been having on a weekly basis. If you're a manager, or if you're an artist that just wants to join our conversation, try to learn the perspective of a manager so you can have better communication with your manager, or know what to look for in a manager if you don't have a manager yet. But we have that discussion on a weekly basis. It's live right now. It's on Zoom. It might go to Discord eventually, but right now it's on Zoom. If you'd like to sign up and join that, go to the MEC Instagram. The link is in the bio as well. I think last week we had over 30 managers join us. Very dope conversation. So we'll keep it going, because I think it's a valuable conversation to have. So those are my updates. And then Payne, we have to talk about whether or not we're doing collab for the crown. I meant to mention that before we got on air, but I got some ideas for that. So we might be doing another collab for the crown contest this year, but stay tuned for those updates as well.
Really putting me on the spot. All right, let me not just have our special guest just sitting there stretching his back. We are happy to have him on. Ruslan, he's a artist, he's a label owner, probably wears many other hats that I'm forgetting, but he can fill in the blank. Let's just jump right into the convo. I did want to talk. Sorry, it's more KE stuff, but I got an email that I wanted to share regarding our last episode about the whole Type Beat lawsuit scam / lie. But I'd rather save that for the end. So, Ruslan, how you feeling, man? Thank you for being on today.
Man, I'm feeling great. Thank you guys for having me. I love your guys' work. I'm a fan of the podcast. I think what you guys do for the community of artists on the internet is really good. I've been subscribed to you for a long time, Dame, and Payne. And then Dame, I loved your interview with Hobson recently, the 4-hour. I thought that was really cool. It was very cathartic for me watching watching that. And so yeah, man, I'm a fan of what you guys do and everything you guys do for independent artists. I think it's incredible.
So I appreciate it. And it's just another guest that's putting my background to shame. Look how dope his video, and you can tell that he's an experienced YouTube, because you do a lot of stuff on YouTube.
That's primarily what I do now. Yeah,
I really got to step up my background, my lighting. I might have to circle back and ask.
Cameras though, right? It looks like you got a new camera. Payne looks like he got a new camera. Yeah, good for you guys. I mean, it's just lighting, 3-point lighting that changes a lot.
Yeah, well, I'll circle back. We'll talk about that. But do you want to just kind of give people a little bit of a background about yourself, who you are, kind of, what you do, so people are familiar?
Yeah, so my name is Ruslan. I'm originally a hip hop artist, producer, entrepreneur, creative, and I've been doing music for quite a while. My first record came out in 2004, like retail record. Did the whole 1,000 press, put it in stores, the whole thing. And I've always had other creative people around me. I was always the guy in my neighborhood with the first studio, with the first recording everybody. And so I've always kind of wanted to help other artists just because I had the ability to. And that's, transcended into multiple different ways. And it ultimately launched into, after I was in a group and we had a really good year in 2011 where we made just a good amount of money and we're killing it with music, I launched a label called King's Dream Entertainment to just help other artists out from our area. And, that went on to have multiple artists that went on to do some great things, specifically, charting on iTunes and selling, probably 15,000 records total. I don't know the exact number, 50 million streams, 100 million streams. Something like we've done well. We've done really well. The sync licenses, our music's been used by guys like Will Smith, and Adidas. And so in that, I've wore the hat, unfortunately, of being an artist and being the label guy. And it was a lot. It was a lot, to say the least.
Yeah. So, and that's why I originally reached out to you when I was running Funk Volume. We inspired a lot of artists, but I was hoping to also inspire a lot of label owners, and a way for artists to parlay their success into, a platform or a label to support other artists. And it's happened here and there, but not to the level in which I thought it was. I thought there was going to be, and not because of us. I wouldn't say I just thought that there would be more Funk Volumes by now. Mm-hmm. And it seems like that hasn't happened. And it seems like, even independent artists, they still get to a certain point and then they just go off and sign a deal and just kind of work on their own stuff. So when you pivoted from being an artist to a label owner, were you an artist at the same time, or did you stop being an artist and start?
Well, that was the most frustrating part, is yes and no. So I think started revving up around 2015, and I had put out a record in 2015 that I thought was a really good record. A lot of my audience still loves it. And I think I dropped one music video for it, quit my job because my artist was starting to really bubble and was doing a killer job on social. And, we just had a good groundswell. We were also a collective. So all the artists on a label were also a collective together, and it was starting to be really good. I mean, we had a whole tour book, the whole bit. And so I drop a record. I start a YouTube page. This is right when vlogging got popping, and I got 5 or 6 vlogs off the ground that were doing really well. And then I stopped doing everything for myself and literally just pivoted for a whole summer to market, roll out, plan the tour, book the tour, all of these different things. And with that first 2 or 3 months of officially quitting my job, I didn't spend a ton of time promoting my music at all. I completely pivoted to getting this tour, and we did a huge show at our local Oceanside amphitheater. It was 1,500 people, and it was dope. The stuff we did was really cool. In that, in that, yes, I started, stopped, started. That's what I kept doing. Right. And so my artist ended up going to get a deal with Interscope. And so I was willing to completely not do anything else and just be the label guy. But I'm sure, as you know, Dame, someone that, you know, if you have a voice, if you have things you want to talk about, that can be a battle within itself. And so for me, it was definitely that. And I really didn't come out of that until 2017 when me and that artist parted ways, and I slowly started easing back in. I was working with artists. I got an artist named Paul Russell now that's doing really well on TikTok. Another artist named John Keith is doing really well. That's no longer with me. That was always the tension, was like, I have to completely stop what I'm doing to help the business side and get the album out. And yeah, it was tough, man. So yes and no. So 2015, I put out an album. Then my artist put out an album. 2016, we did a group album. I did a solo album at the end of 2016. So that, and it created problems. It created challenges.
So I want to talk specifically about those challenges. If there's stuff that you don't want to touch, is too sensitive, that's fine. But before that, so when you started a label, like, it was you running it, or did you have like just a business person that was helping to run it as well? Or were you literally running the label yourself and then being an artist as well?
Initially, I kept trying to put somebody in that business role, right? I kept trying to put somebody, so like my best friend now, who I spent a lot of time with, he was like kind of helping me out at the time. And then there was another guy who was virtually helping me out. He was doing like our email and our marketing. And so when we had those really good years, 2011, 2012, he was helping out. But when you're, as you know, Dame, when you're initially getting off the ground, there's not a ton of money to do. So my buddy went and just worked a job at AT&T and was like, hey, I'm going to go do this thing, you know, and provided for his family that way. My other buddy just he was a real estate guy. So trying to put people in position was my intent. However, it didn't work because there was no revenue early on to justify somebody spending 20 hours a week trying to do. So I started with people. And then eventually when I look up and it's 2014, 2015, it's just me doing all of the business stuff.
Yeah, that's tough. And Payne, feel free to jump in. I know there is a place I want to go with, because I want to talk about some of those challenges specifically, because I think that's where, a lot of the gems will be in terms of people listening to this that want to start a label. But yeah, what were some of those challenges in working with artists, and kind of it's probably around like establishing and managing expectations, I'm assuming, but feel free to talk specifically about some of those.
I think primarily when you have creative people, they don't function like business people, right? And so I had to learn the business. I'm not naturally a business person. So I read all the books, entrepreneur books, and like really immersed myself. And this is when Gary Vee was getting hot, right? This is around that same time. And I knew, hey, the system is put out content all the time. 2011, we had put out a song a week called Remix Wednesdays, and we would remix a popular song. And then we have put out 3 mixtapes and 2 retail projects. And that is really what set us up to crush it in 2012. And actually I think we probably made like, I don't know, 80 grand as a group that year. It was good money, but it wasn't like life-changing money when you're splitting it between 2 people and a booking agent. So the pivot was, hey, we got to put out stuff all the time. We really got to be working. You can't just drop an album when you feel like it. You can't just go on tour when you feel like it. We got to approach this thing like a job. And when you have artists that they're not thinking like that. And most artists do eventually, if they stick around and keep making art and actually become successful, they realize like you can't just wing this thing and just only make stuff when you're inspired. You got to always be creating, always be releasing. That was the initial challenge. In that, this more challenges was hey, like you're doing your thing, but you're running this label and you're getting a percentage, right? And then it got into some of that stuff, which was like, well, hey, like I'm using my platform because I was an artist first. So I'm leveraging my platform. I'm leveraging my money. I'm leveraging all of my relationships with vendors to shoot videos, booking shows. And so that became an issue towards the end with some specific people. And it's a lot of challenges, man. And then just the divided attention, like wanting priority from someone like myself who, you know, I've gone on and made way more money than I did doing the label thing after the label. I've been way more successful just on my name, no one else's name. And to demand someone to like suppress and lay down all their other passions to support an artist when the artist doesn't even seem like he's in the headspace to really approach this thing like a business is a huge sacrifice. And I saw the writing on the wall, and me and that artist specifically, we parted ways, and it was really messy. So then you talk about the relational blowout, and you know, it was a lot there. The questions of integrity, and so full circle, that artist that got signed to Interscope, I ended up, I did a live stream, and you guys could look it up. I got a live stream called, I think I sent it to you, Dame, like my 5 biggest mistakes running a label. And at the end of the stream, I literally just give him back all his masters. And I'm like, you're not even going to, like, here's all the, but you always got paid. I never missed a payment. Here's all the proof. Here's all the receipts. And by the way, here are your masters back. Leave me alone. Don't ever say anything ill about my character. This is stuff on social was being talked about. You know what I mean? And right. So a lot of challenges, Dame.
Right. Okay. I didn't plan on bringing up this topic today, but this seems like a good transition point. I want to talk about this narrative that I think really speaks to all 3 of our experiences as managers or label owners. And it's this narrative that the artist is never at fault when business is either misunderstood or when it goes sour, because the artist, according to this narrative that's quite prevalent, especially with fans and especially with artists, the narrative says artists make art. So if you're a producer, you make beats. If you're a rapper, you write music and record music. You don't learn the business. That's not your job. It's your manager's job to learn the business. It's your lawyer's job to learn the business. It's the label's job to learn the business. The problem is none of those other people have the artist's interest at mind 100%. You know, the artist has, if I'm a producer and I'm making beats, right, and I don't learn the business, I'm supposed to rely on somebody else to handle all of my business. I'm an adult. But this is a narrative that's out there. And so you see it when something like this happens, where you part ways with your artist, or Dame versus Hobson, or me versus my, where the artist is always in this position to accuse the business person of doing something shady, but they can't quite articulate what it is because they don't understand the business. And then public opinion is always going to run against the business person or whoever's perceived as the business person. What's with this narrative, especially now when we romanticize being an independent artist, when we romanticize being a boss and being your own CEO and all this other stuff? Why is this narrative still running the music business? It seems to me to just be completely counterintuitive and ridiculous.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think, it's ultimately why I started the MEC in the first place. It's, if you do want to, and I think I tweet about this all the time, but it's like, there's no boss in any other industry, there's no CEO in any other industry that doesn't know their industry inside and out, that doesn't know how their industry operates, knows their competitors, knows everything, the landscape, like they know their business inside and out. So, and I know that the boss talk, the CEO talk, it's just more for like clout and stuff like that. But, I kind of take it literally when people tell like, hey, you want to be a boss? Like, if you really want to be a boss, you got to boss up and learn the industry that you say you want a career in. And like I tell people all the time, it's not only so that you can make the right moves, but because this industry has a cloud of skepticism that just hovers over it. Everybody's got their guard up. You're super paranoid. As you educate yourself, it quells that paranoia, right? Mm-hmm. It quells the paranoia so that when somebody's doing their job, when somebody's trying to take advantage of you, and it's not everybody's trying to take advantage of you, right? You know the industry, so you know what it is. Like you can separate the KEs from the pains, and it's a lot easier. It's a lot easier to do that when you know the business. Like at this point, I don't go into any room like skeptical. Like I know what I want going into the room. I can identify a scammer. Like I just don't feel like anybody could take advantage of me at this point, unless I let them, because I know what I know about the industry is that easy. But yeah, hopefully the MEC combats that narrative. I know we're not the biggest thing in the industry, but that's why the MEC exists, and we're going to keep talking about this until that's not the issue anymore.
I think it's also what is viewed based on the value it perceives, right? So when an artist makes music, that is the product. And the artist is like, well, I went to the studio and I wrote these songs and I did all this stuff. They don't understand, like, bruh, I spent 50 hours a week in a Starbucks for 3 months straight, like doing all this other stuff, talking to agent, right? Because it's not like we were super popping. Like we have to finagle and finesse a lot of the tour. We have to really think strategically of the marketing things. And so like, they don't see the countless hours you spend doing all the other stuff. And so then it's like when the issue comes up, when the money comes in, and like you always say, Dame, like when the zeros get added, right, it's like, oh, now we're talking six figures. Hey, well, why are you entitled to this percentage? But this is what we agreed on. Like, this is what we talked about. Yeah, but what'd you really do? You just like, and I literally had somebody say, you just like wrote some emails and like, just, booked a couple shows. And I'm like, do you think that's how, right? And so, and for me, I think it's education. That's why I appreciate what you guys are doing. And so, Payne, to answer your question, I think my problem and where I fell short is I wasn't clear and I wasn't documenting what I was doing because I felt like I didn't have to. I felt like this is family. I don't need to sit here and remind you that I just spent 8 hours a day in a Starbucks writing emails, writing copy, doing all those things that most people behind the scenes know what it takes, and is one person doing it, or just the opportunity cost of not doing my YouTube when I was one of the early ones doing the Casey Neistat vlogs, promoting my own name and my own brand to help somebody. What is the opportunity cost attached? I wasn't clear about that stuff because I thought it was family. And then all these questions come up. And so I'm just kind of like, well, it's not worth the headache. It really isn't worth the headache to me anymore when I can go out and do my own thing. But I think that's the narrative, man, is it's a lack of education. And for me specifically, it was a lack of clarity, not doing simple things like communicating what was coming in, how it was getting split up, what I was spending my time on. And you compound that with family, you compound that with hyper creative people who may not be the most emotionally stable. You combine that with, some recreational alcohol and marijuana use, and then you can get some really messy situations.
Yeah. It's super tough to establish, like, looking back at it, you can say, hey, we should have talked about this. This should have been clear. But some of this shit, like I would have never thought to talk about because I didn't know it was be an issue. Like one of the things that was an issue with me and Hop's situation was his first album, right? Like his first album, Raw. I worked for 2 years before we started making money and putting that album out. So the agreement on that album was we were supposed to split that 50-50, not like 50 to the label, 50 to him. Like it was supposed to be a 50-50 agreement between me and him. Because I've been working for so long, I've been putting in my own money. Like that was the agreement. And it didn't make that much money out the gate, so he wasn't tripping. However, when that album did started making more money, that's when the problem started. That's when it's like, hold on, I'm giving you this much of this. Like, so artists only acknowledge like what if the album just flopped? Or what if you decided to stop making like music? Then that's the risk I took, right? I couldn't have prepared for him having a change of heart. Like once we agreed to something, like there's a lot of things that you just can't prepare for when you're running a label and working with artists. So it's tough to even say hindsight's 2020. Like you could have never, I'm sure there are some specific examples that you may want to share, but there's some stuff you just can't like predict unless we talk about it now. Like maybe there's some artists that want to start a label that listen to these stories now and be like, oh, okay, well, Ruslan said this on the podcast, so we have to prepare for this, even though I would have never expected that to be an issue.
Well, what an ugly conversation and what an ugly reality. That whole more money, more problems maxim. I was always looking at it from an individual standpoint and thinking, no, I'm fine. I can handle when money starts coming in. I'm a responsible person. I'm a moral person. It has nothing to do with me internally. It has to do with relationships. And I didn't understand that. So when I had my first bit of success in the music business, when I had a gold record, when I had a #1 record, all of a sudden I'm looking around me and I'm losing friends and I'm losing associates, and rappers that I work with are angry at me, and producers that I know are angry at me. And I'm like, I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. I'm making beats that are actually breaking ground in the music business. Why does that make you become more of my enemy than more of my friend and more of my supporter and more of my collaborator? To this day, I don't understand that psychology, because I've never had any kinds of conflicts with a collaborator when money wasn't coming in, or when streams weren't coming in, when no one cared. When the music was obscure, when no one was in the venues to see us perform, everything was fine. We were completely in love with the process. We were close. And then the first little bit of success starts coming in, and then all of a sudden the dynamic completely shifts to antagonism. What the fuck, man?
Ruslan, I don't get that, but you're right, Payne. I think it's not just like, one person gets money. Like, how does that person deal with that? It's just the environment. The environment changes. But Ruslan, when you brought on this artist, what was communicated to them as like what they would receive in return for, signing to their label? Like, what was the expectation?
Yeah. And like I said, I got a video where I like go in detail and pull up the paperwork and all that kind of stuff. It's a pretty long stream because of some stuff that was said publicly. I just kind of like, well, let me just own the narrative and own my mistakes.
My bad. What do you feel like that was beneficial? Like doing that level of detail, like actually creating a video?
Because my integrity was challenged, because he said, like, he repeatedly said publicly that he wasn't paid for his past releases. He had 2 projects when he said he wasn't paid for those. Repeatedly, publicly said that, and kind of we come from the faith-based space too. So that like my integrity means a lot to me because I'm a follower of Jesus, and you're going to say that like, I'm not paying you, and like, you never stopped getting paid. You just weren't paying attention to your distro kid. Just saying, like, here's all that. And so that's why I made that video, and I really pulled out all the paperwork and the details. And it's a rather long video, but it's a good for folks that want all the tea and all the drama. Like, it's all out there, and it's, a lot of it is my fault as well. Like, just on the job training, not knowing what the heck I was doing as I was being, juggling a lot of things on top of, like, I was working a job for the first half of this. So, basic agreement. It was just a 50-50 agreement, 1-page sheet. And the agreement was like, hey, I'm going to handle all of this side. Every record, you're going to get 2 music videos shot that I'll take care of, and I'll use my vendors. And we recouped together. So any money spent outside of that was recouped together, meaning that you weren't recouping off your half to me, meaning if we spent $10,000, you don't got to make me $20,000 to recoup. First 10,000 comes in. And then I figured out this
a profit share agreement.
Yeah, exactly. And then I created this. I created an entire pre-order system where before an album ever dropped, we would generate a good amount of money to pay for the producers, to pay for the manufacturing of the record, to pay for the music videos. So everything was in the black coming into it. And so the agreement. So it was a cool system, like using pre-orders and what I learned from Seth Godin, letting the audience fund it, the whole bit. It was a good system, and it was just basic 50-50 agreement, with a clause in there that, I think it was 15% or 20% for shows and that kind of thing. And so that was fine until Interscope got interested. And my plan was, we were watching Pat and Chance at the time. And my plan was, bro, we can do what they're doing. Like, we can do what they're doing. We have that groundswell. The record came out and it did 3,500 units first week, which is 2015. That's some really good numbers for 2015, right? Before Spotify. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, we could do what they're doing. And I remember being at Interscope and them just telling us, like, yeah, you got to remember, like, that's the exception to the rule. You can't really pull that off on your own. You need some muscle. So I say all that to say, once the negotiation started, which was like a year process between like going through the building, and initially, like we were talking to Atlantic, I kind of finessed the interest from Atlantic to get us over to Interscope, because Interscope was loosely interested. So there was a lot of like finagling I was doing behind the scenes, and on some just let me create the perception of value. I got through my relationship with Murs, we got on the Carson Daily show, like late night TV. We're performing on late night TV, right? And then Interscope's hitting us up like, yo, like, let's get you back in the office. Let's figure this thing out. Let's close this deal, right? And so it was a very calculated plan. And so then when the numbers started coming up, it was like, yo, is an advance coming in, right? And I'm like, yo, this is the advance. We split the advance, just like every other dollar that comes in. Well, why do you need this percentage of the advance? Well, what do you want me to take? Well, can you go from 50 to 40? Fine, I'll go from 50 to 40. Well, no, I want you to go to 20. Like, this is multiple conversations. You want me to go from 50% to 20. You realize there's not a lot of money being made right now. You realize I got a family. My car just broke down, right? And that's where I was just like, no, like, I'm not. No, we agreed on a 50-50 split. We're not going any lower than that. So I think we compromised at like 35. And then it was like, what are you doing to justify your 50%? That became the question. What were you doing to justify your 50%? And I'm like, half the work it took to get us here. Like, just because now we're talking six figures, that doesn't mean that I didn't, like, in my opinion, we probably wouldn't have even ended up over at Interscope, right? Because Jeff Vaughn gave us the initial offer, but we knew Jeff at Atlantic, it wasn't going to be a good fit because he wanted him to use writers, and Interscope, it was the Manny and the guys that were working with Kendrick and that whole team. And so we, so the question was like, what do you do to deserve this 50%? And I'm like, dude, like, you just wrote up a bunch of emails. Like, what do you mean? Right. And so once the trust was gone, once the value was no longer perceived, that's when it got really hard to try and I just got done. I just was like, I'm not going to keep trying to explain it. Like, this doesn't make sense. To the headache and the drama of it all was just like, this is silly. And so the deal got signed. We settled at 35. 6 months later, I was like, all right, bro, like, hey, if we can't get on the same accord, we're going to go ahead. Like, let's just part ways, And so I let him out. I think I had him for 4 more albums, because we didn't have to get the paperwork cleaned up. Interscope was like, you can't have a 1-page handshake agreement and come and do business with us. You need real paperwork. So then I got a lawyer. I had to pay for that. We redid our paperwork, and it was like 4 albums, or I think it was 4 albums. Then had 5 albums with Interscope, and the deal was going through my label. So the Interscope would cut me a check. Right. And then that's how that was dispersed, which I thought was normal. He didn't like that. He wanted to get paid on his own, and he wanted to pay me. Right. Like, I'll pay you. And I'm like, no, like, this isn't how none of this works. Like, and so anyway, right. So fast forward, we couldn't see eye to eye on a number of other things. And I was just like, yo, it's all good. Like, whatever. Like, if I lose a bunch of bread, and, it's fine. It's cool. And you're free to go. And, yeah. And initially the mistake I made was like, you're free to go. Let me hold on to the masters. That was my thing. It was like, let me hold on to the masters since I'm letting you out of this deal. And I kept paying him for the music. Right. And then that became a point of contention. Oh, he took my masters. And it's like, bro, you're still paid through DistroKid. I didn't take anything. And then that's when 6 months ago, that's when I did a stream and was like, here, bro, you have it all. I don't want nothing to do with it. I don't want to make another dollar off of you. I don't want any questions of my integrity to be brought up, because it's just not worth it.
So obviously, like, what is fair is subjective. Like, that's typically, where people clash. Like, I think I've been fair my entire life. It's fair for you to disagree with that if we're doing business. I understand that. But what you just described, like, if you're in a 50-50 partnership as the label with an artist, and then a major comes in, I could see how he might push back on you getting 50% of, and again, there may be some details that I'm missing, but like, I could see how he could push back a little bit, because now a label steps in and the label's doing what you were doing. So I can see a justification for the lowering in your percentage, just from my perspective. Sure. And I would imagine that's why you were open to that conversation, because people that are stuck in major label deals, it takes them a while to see money, right? And if you are taking half of that, it's going to take them even longer or much bigger records to see money. So I could see why the conversation was necessary, and it's good that you were open to that.
Yeah, I was open to it, just not on like, you're not going to take me from 50 to 40 to 35 to 20. Like I was like, at some point, like that, I didn't feel like that was justifiable. But yeah, I mean, from his perspective, I definitely understood where he was coming from. It was just in a way that I think like diminished my contribution to the situation. It was really trying to position me to be a manager. So we're going from partners to I'm your manager. And that was something that I was like, I'm not your manager. Like, I'm not going to be your babysitter. And that wasn't a compromise I was willing to make, to go that low. In hindsight, I should have bounced. In hindsight, I shouldn't have even done the deal. In hindsight's 2020, right? I should have just cut out. Earlier, I had saw things that I knew that this wasn't going to be a compatible fit before that. But I was so deep invested that I was like, well, if I could have some money tucked away, then I'll be fine, right? Like at least I'll kind of make back, because I had, I told you we did our own amphitheater show. Like I came out of pocket 10 bands for that out of my own savings account I didn't make him recoup for that, right? So there was, again,
you were in the hole. So you were in the hole when the label conversations. So you were.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we were making money from one pot, right, from the music side and the tour side, but it wasn't enough to cover everything. And then we had this huge show that costed us like $10,000-$11,000 to put on. That was a free show at the Oceanside Amphitheater. And so I'm having to dip into because what happened was we booked the venue for one price, but then when they understood that it was a hip hop show, then it's like, y'all need to hire off-duty police officers. Y'all need to hire more security. Y'all need to get more insurance. And so what went from being like a $4,000 show, it turned into an $11,000 show, and we didn't have the cash flow from the business side. So I just dipped into my own savings. So like I quit my job, 25 bands in savings. I'm good. And then I look up 6 months later and there's like $9,000, $10,000 sitting there, so there was some stuff. And again, had I communicated that, it let me pull out this 10 bands that I lost on this show, because I thought we were going to crush it in merch, and we got to do $10,000. And we saw like $1,000 in merch that night. I'm like, we put on a show for the whole community, 1,500 people headlining, amazing sound, amazing lights. Didn't make the money back. So yeah, communication, clarity, right? I totally dropped the ball on that stuff.
And I could see even with that, like, was it clear? Was that your idea, number one? And was it clear to him that you were coming out of pocket for this?
The idea was mine.
Could he turn around and say, well, I didn't even want to do this. Like, I didn't know that you were spending this much on it. And I didn't, you just told me to play a show. It's going to be people there. I showed up.
Yes.
Could that be?
This was our big homecoming show. This was our big, we're coming home from tour show. It was no rappers in our area really pulled it off on that level where you're talking, the amphitheater right on the beach. We all wanted to make the show happen. At one point, he was cool with just like, well, whatever, we could just cancel it. You know what I mean? And I was like, nah, we got to make this thing happen, And so maybe from his perspective, he could be like, yeah, whatever, I don't even care to do the show. But once we did the other side of the show, it was definitely like, yeah, I'm glad we did that for our community. That was really cool. That was an amazing moment that I was willing to take an L on, because I knew long-term I would make it back. I knew long-term there would be other revenue that comes in. And all along, like, if they, I sat him down, the labels, Atlantic Interscope, was like, yeah, just go through you. You guys split the advance. This is just how it works, right? That was the way it was. They were talking to me. It was like, yeah, we just do the deal through you. And so I sat him down. I gave him the recommendation for Wendy Day's book. I gave him and I walked him through all the numbers. This is how the numbers are going to look. This is how much money is going to come in. This is how we're going to split it. Are you okay with this? Are you sure? We had like a 2-hour conversation, and he was like, yeah, for sure, I'm down. And then I think he went away and he thought about it more, and that's where it was like, well, why are you worth this percentage?
Yeah, I mean, this is so. Oh God, I'm having flashbacks from when I managed an artist. And yeah, it was a lot of emotion, and you think, God, I shouldn't have to justify investing my time, energy, and resources into a person that's going to spit in my face the second that my hard work starts paying off for them, and then walk away from me, because that's really, in a moral sense, very, very trash-like behavior. but it's happening all the time. And I think, I think the key here is for all of us, when we're working with artists, we have a long-term vision and we have a lot of faith in the artist's success that the artists themselves don't even have. And so there's a lot of resistance. But a question for you is, you said you saw the writing on the wall, and I know I heard you utter that sentence a couple of times. What are some red flags for those of us who are trying to partner with artists? What are some red flags that should tip us off that maybe this isn't the right situation for us to invest our all in?
Oh, that's a great question. Whew. I think the stuff that was tough for me was and I feel like when Hobson, when you told Hobson, like, you don't even work that hard, like I so understood that exchange, because I like that is a sentiment that a lot of us on the business side feel, but yet on the creative side, I understand that artists want to get in a vibe and get in the zone and get in a flow state. Like I understand both sides of that. So initially, it was like, yo, this album did really well. You sold 3,500 units. This is incredible. We took the leftovers of that album and made an album, a collective album that was even bigger than that album on overall streams. Killer, like amazing, like literally the remnants of like stuff you threw away was incredible. And it was like, bro, you have music, drop something 6 months again, like keep putting stuff out. And it was like, I don't know if I want to drop an album until 2 years later. And I'm just like, bro, no, like you're not Drake. Like this is not the climate that we're in. You got to put out a lot of music, and you have the music. Trust me and let me, or A&R it, and facilitate the release and do, because that's the tough part. I was also mixing everything. I'm mixing everything. I'm project managing. I'm producing on some of these records, right? So
you really didn't do anything at all.
Yeah, I mean, you can go back and look at the credits. Like I was doing a lot. Like I was doing the rollout, the marketing, the mixing. I was hands-on with the whole process, and it was people that helped. Don't get me twisted. It wasn't like it was just me producing all. I wasn't producing all of it, but I was producing on stuff, and I was definitely mixing and mastering, and facilitating that. So when that was the first one, it was like, oh, like you're not really down to pump out music at the rate we need to really get on. Right? Like, cause now if we got Interscope, cause Interscope was like, yeah, the thing was like, y'all do another indie record and we'll market it for you. But you guys keep all the money. That was the move they were doing back then with like I think they said the first Kendrick mixtape, Section 80 was like them, but not them. And they did the same thing with Schoolboy Q. Like, y'all got an album you can do on your own. You can use our studios. You can use our PR. You can use everything, but you guys do it on your own. We'll look the other way. That was the arrangement. And I'm like, bro, like we got to strike. Like this needs to come out immediately. The moment the paperwork is signed, like I'm talking to whoever the A&Rs is connecting me with the publicist, the PR, and I'm like, let's go. And it was just like, oh, I don't want to put nothing out yet. And I'm like, why? So this was a 1.5-year process that I saw that coming. And then on tour, there were some red flags of just like kind of bringing people that didn't need to be there, right? Like, why is this person here? Like, what is he doing? What is he doing here? Right. And then this person is not really meeting their responsibilities and not really delivering at the level they should be delivering at, whether it's somebody's driving or somebody's running merch. So it's just like random people started coming around that were like his childhood friends, but it's like, we just can't bring everybody on tour. Usually and so there was that, the circle started to change. And then when the transition happened and he was out of and got his own place, because now there's money coming in, then I was like, oh wow, okay, like you really fun to be on some like rock star stuff, like not like doing coke or wilding out, but it was just like, okay, this is no longer congruent to what people love you for. Like, again, we come from the faith-based stuff. Like Lecrae is giving him a cosign. Andy Mineo is asking him to open for him. Like, this is the world that we come in, and it became incongruent with that. And I don't want to get into details, but it just was just like, yo, this isn't really indicative of someone that's rapping about Jesus. And now that's, this is weird. And I knew, and then it was starting to affect my spirituality. So that's when I was like, I got to pull back. Like, this is just too many things. I'm starting to get more consumed with the money side of it than with anything else. Cause I'm just trying to make my bread back at this point. And I was like, I got to pull out. This can't be a thing. And now again, when you guys know that, the value you present to the situation. And I think that's most evident with what you do after the situation, right? Dame's gone on to do incredible things. Payne has gone on to do, I've done incredible things after the situation. So then that's to me is indicative of like, I don't need to make my money on the back of anybody else. Like, I'll be fine doing my own thing. So those are some of the red flags, is that, and also not knowing myself, man. The mistake I made is like, I'm the face of stuff now, right? And I should have knew that 5 years ago and not trying to force myself to be some behind the scenes person, because it was killing me to be the guy that's like in the dungeon, mixing the records, right? Not doing my own videos, not doing YouTube, not putting music videos together for my own stuff. I messed up in that part because I knew that what I envisioned for myself was not being somebody's sidekick, was not being, Pat the manager. Like, that wasn't who I was wired to be. And that was my mistake.
Shit. He wanted to put out an album every 2 years. What was the plan for those 2 years? Like, what would he do? Did he have enough money to even live off?
I think he wanted to do shows. I think he wanted to just, it was this philosophy of, I want to make art when I have something to say, which isn't a bad thing, right? That's not a bad thing to say. Hey, I want to go away, make something to say, have something to say, live life, experience things, and then come back and share the story. Like, that's not a bad way to look at it. The issue was, bro, you got fire music. Like, we're sitting here on 25 records and they're all good, but they're all incomplete. They all got a verse and a hook, or half a verse and a hook. And these things but they're good. Bro, go in, finish that. And let's just drop it. It don't got to be a perfect narrative and this whole thing. It could just be 10 fire records. And if you do that twice in a row, your first year on Interscope, with the mobility that we got this far on our own, and now we got some of their resources and we got their PR behind us, like, come on, like, sky's the limit. And it just was a different philosophy of how he wanted to make art. And I just was like, let's pump stuff out. I knew you touch that algorithm and it's going to pop.
So my solution to that, like, because I never told anybody they had to make music. I let them kind of make it at their own pace. And, Hobson made music at a slower pace. Dizzy made it at a faster pace, and Jaron probably somewhere in the middle. But my solution to that was just to bring on more artists. I was like, I got shit to do. I got to grow this label. I can't force these cats I can't force Hobson to make music. Not sure where my brother's at right now, but, we got to move. So I just started adding more artists to keep us busy. That was my solution. But one of the things you said, I hate the term, like, managers make money on the back of artists. Like, that shit bothers me, because, like, I feel like I add a lot of value, right? Like, of course, you're the artist, you have the product, you have, but what I feel like I bring to the table is like, okay, you're making this amount, with teaming together, we can double that, triple that. Like, so and maybe it's just semantics, but that bothers me, because I know that's how a lot of artists look at it. Like, you make money from me. Yeah. Right. And that, and to me, it goes back to the education piece. Well, you don't really understand my value. You don't really understand what I do. You don't really understand what I bring to the table. And that would be a red flag for me. I mean, that's partly why I don't work with music artists anymore, because they don't understand the value. It's like, hey, you make money from me. It's like, case in point, like, I know nobody on Funk Volume is thinking about NFTs or social tokens or anything like that. But I'd bring that to the table, and there'd be an opportunity here, especially with our community, to really make a shitload of money right now in the NFT space. But you're not doing it because that's not something that you're thinking about. That's not something that you're studying, authentically trying to tap into. So that's not making money off the back of an artist. That's bringing a totally separate opportunity that you weren't even thinking about to the table, so that we can all benefit from. Yeah. And I would just go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and I think you're totally right. And I will give you an example of this. Like, have you guys ever heard of NACA? NACA, NACA?
Is that the college joint?
Yeah, the college circuit. Okay, So like I was in the spoken word scene, right? Got us into that network, got us an agent, and got us popping at NACA, the only hip hop, well, one of the few hip hop acts that like was doing 30, 40 shows through NACA. So that's an example that no one else is thinking about, doing college shows and really hitting that circuit that way. But I was able to finesse my background in spoken word, and I had us opening with a poem and then doing raps after the poem. And that's the, you know, the 2014 equivalent of NFTs, right? Like nobody was thinking that. And my point would be, again, what happened on the other side of that, right? Because if we think about the manager artist exchange, right? What manager makes, what, 20%? And that's sometimes off the net, sometimes off the gross. That's 5 times what the artist is making, right? Oh, excuse me, the artist is making 5 times what the manager is making. That to me just sounds like an imbalanced situation. Like that, like, because I think the managers present way more value, to your point, Dame. Way more value than.
Well, it depends. It depends. Like I always had, there are a lot of shitty managers out there that don't even deserve to have a job.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, but again, it's another reason why I'm not managing music artists, because, unless it's a big artist comes to the table and wants to work, like let's do it. But, it's too little of money for me to deal with what I've experienced. So you get a lot of managers, a lot of smart managers that leave. I know a lot of ex-managers, they've gone off and started their own business or just doing other cool shit because they don't want to deal with the shit.
Yeah. And I think that speaks to the point of their value. If they can do that successfully, then it's very clear that they weren't at fault. But having said that, we're running super late. This is a very long episode, but it's good because I think we're saying a lot of cool stuff. So you're going to have to come back on and continue this conversation, because I think we're barely scratching the surface at a lot of these kind of deeper conversations about the psychology of being an independent artist and being a manager and so forth. So once again, appreciate you. Shout out your socials. And I know you have a podcast. Shout that out, how people can contact you, how people can consume that podcast.
Yeah, it's just Ruslan KD on all platforms. My YouTube is Ruslan KD. And again, if you guys want to watch the 45-minute version of me going over all the mistakes I've made running an independent label, you could definitely do that. And generally speaking, I don't recommend being an artist and trying to run a label. Get you a Dame, find somebody that can handle the business, and or just build yourself up as an artist. I think that's more feasible. I think if I can go back, I would have just said, I'm not going to be creatively codependent, is what I call it. I was creatively codependent. I wasn't sure of myself. I wasn't confident in myself. I wanted to be people's savior, and instead of letting my life be the overflow of that. And so that's the big idea for me is, if you're an artist and you can do both, don't. Build yourself up. And maybe when you have more leverage and resources, it'll be an easier transaction. Meaning if you start now, you got millions of dollars to help another artist, maybe that balance becomes a little different.
Once again, appreciate you. This is the Music Entrepreneur Club podcast, episode number 90, presented by BeatStars. We're live on BeatStars twice a week. Check it out, beatstars.live. Appreciate all of you for tuning in. Peace.
Peace.